Hi everyone, my name is Michael DeGeorge, and I'm here to post another video on this drizzly day here in Rochester, New York. I think we can officially say that it is now fall, that all the days going forward will be 40s and 50s. The leaves are falling at a pretty rapid pace, and it's a blessed day though, as I always say. And this morning, I want to post a video basically talking about Wegmans. And yesterday, as I had said in previous videos, I was going to McGregor's on Buffalo Road. Saw a lot of guys that I worked with for many, many years. And I enjoyed myself. I was there for about 2 hours. And I think it was time that I talked about my time at Wegmans and how much Wegmans has meant to me as not just as a worker, but as an individual. And I'll explain. Wegmans is one of the two jobs that I've had really my whole life. My first job was at Big Apple at the public market, and I worked there with my dad for 7.5 years. And my dad worked in the public market for over 20 years. He worked at a place called AJ Camp, and then once Big Apple Deli was built, he went there. And he was a truck driver, and then he was one of the two foremans in the warehouse when I was there. And he unceremoniously got fired, and I ended up quitting. And a few weeks later, my mom saw in the newspaper ads for Wegmans was hiring. And at the time, I thought it was going to be for stores. It ended up being for the warehouse. And before I get into my time at Wegmans, I like to talk about how much Wegmans meant to me and my parents even before I worked there. My mom and dad didn't always get along, as I've said in previous videos, but one of the things they had in common was they both loved Wegmans to the point where they wouldn't just go to the Wegmans on Lyle Avenue. They would go to Wegmans on Mount Reed, the Wegmans on Ladder Road, the Wegmans even in Canandaigua at one time. My mom saw in the paper that there were sales in Canandaigua's Wegmans. So we actually went there to shop. And one of the things I used to always do is they would shop and I would go to the magazine aisle and I would look at the latest edition of WWF magazine, or I would be looking at the Street and Smith's magazines. Street and Smith was a publication that would come out for all the major sports, football, basketball, baseball, college football, college basketball. And they would do their yearly predictions, and they would give like projections for stats, what the stats were for the previous player the year before, and all that. And I loved all that stuff because this is pre-internet. So that's what I used to do while they would shop. Then they would come down the aisle and say, "Mike, we're all done." And then I would purposely push the cart and go down the certain aisle that I wanted them to go down, because what I would tell them is I'll empty the cart and put the groceries on the belt. The real reason why I wanted to do that was because when I would do that, I would go into the aisle first. I would then walk behind the aisle and I would look at all the girls' butts. So I would make sure that the aisle that they would go down to get checked out would always be a woman as a cashier. I know, God, I'm a sinner. I'm sorry, but that's what I used to do. So we always loved Wegmans before I even started working there. So I worked in the warehouse. I started January 2005. I worked all the way to the fall of 2023. And I'm not going to get into all the reasons why I no longer work there, but suffice to say, my mental health issues, they were too much to overcome at that point. And as you know, 7 months later, I was in the hospital fighting for my life. So there you go. But along the way, I met a lot of wonderful people. And first off, I just want to thank everybody in all the departments, as my baby boy Keanu just jumps off the table. So anyway, I like to thank everybody that I worked with at Wegmans. Everybody. There was grocery, meat, fresh, freezer, salvage. I worked in pretty much every department, at least for a little bit. So, and I especially want to thank my first crew, because when I first started in Wegmans, I was considered a casual. So for the first 18 months, I had to sort of earn my stripes. So I want to thank all the guys that I worked with in meat. And I don't want to get into everybody because then I'm going to leave some people out, but you know who you are. And I thank you. And I love everything that you did for me. It is really an honor and really a privilege to work with all of you. But I also want to give a specific shout out to 4 guys that I saw yesterday at McGregor's. And the first one's the obvious one. It's the reason why I won. It's Jason Meisner. Jason was one of those guys that I worked with in meat right from the beginning. And I worked with him in a lot of different departments for all 18 plus years that I was there. And Jason saw me through the best and through the worst. And he was always there for me, always supported me. And like I said in the previous video, he was there for me when my dad passed away. And I love him. I love his family. And it was an honor to see him again yesterday. And I text him every day. And he usually texts me back every day. And it's a friendship that I'll have for the rest of my life. And I cherish it. Thank you, Jay. And the second person I want to thank is actually a supervisor, Brad Pete and Jason Curry. Jason Curry was a guy that I worked with in grocery, in produce, and also in meat and fresh. And he was always a nice guy to me. Every time I had my issues, he would always try to calm me down, get me in a good place. He was always good to me. Thank you, Jay. And Brad Pete, same thing. He was a team leader in meat, and he was a good man to me. And when I was really at my worst was towards the end of my run when I was in the meat depot. I just want to say thank you, Brad, for being a good friend, not just a boss. I appreciate that. The other person that I met yesterday was the first person I met when I came to McGregor's, and that's Greg Lochner. Greg Lochner was a dear friend of mine. Worked with him for close to 20 years. I've known him for over 20 years. He's a good man, one of the best workers I've ever seen there. And he's still working there. He's been there over 30 years. His dad was a great worker before him. And he's always been great to me because we had 2 things in common. We both loved the Buffalo Bills. We were both fans of pro wrestling. I don't think Greg liked pro wrestling as much as I do, but he still liked it enough that he would text me from time to time, ask me questions, see where storylines and feuds are going and stuff like that. So I cherish his friendship and I love him very much. And I'll get back to him in a minute. The other people I want to thank who weren't in McGregor's yesterday, but have been instrumental in my life, and it's because of Wegmans that I know them. First is Steve Barone. Steve Barone is an avid Dallas Cowboy fan, and I've worked with him for about 17 of the 18 years I knew him, and I've known him ever since. I text him every day. He texts me back. I've went on trips with him. He's a very nice man, and we don't even just talk about football. We talk about life. We talk about stuff that's going on in my life, his life, and he's really a great, great friend, and I thank him very much. And I also want to thank Angelino Martinez. I call him KC because he's the biggest Kansas City Chiefs fan that I know. And no one's perfect, Angelino, but I worked with his dad. His dad used to not like the fact that I would always catch up to him when I was picking in the grocery aisle. And Angelino's been a good friend of mine. I worked with him for several years, and even though I'm no longer working at Wegmans, I still keep in touch with him every day. And he's been a really, really good person to me. So thank you, Angelino. I love you. And this gets me to the person I want to thank the most that I met based on being at Wegmans, and that's Andy Ciadella. I worked with Andy pretty much from 2006 on. And as I've said in previous videos, without him, I would have not have found the Lord. I would have not became a born again Christian. And I would have not accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And he, along with his whole family, saved my life. As a matter of fact, I'm going to meet his dad for McDonald's in a little while. I love his family dearly. I've said it before, but to see a Della family save my life, I can never repay them for that. So thank you, Andy, from the bottom of my heart. I love you, and I love your family very much. And it's all because of Wegmans that I met him, and I met all these wonderful people. And I'm going back to Greg, because my favorite times when I was at Wegmans was when I was in grocery, and I would do my assignment as fast as humanly possible. And thus I would go up to the mods and then help my buddies, my brothers, Greg Lochner and Mark Cassidy. Greg would be in one mod, Mark would be in the other. And I couldn't be at both at once. And every time I go to one, the other one say, why don't you come with me? But they're great people. And I hate even talking about Mark in the past tense, because Mark a few years ago passed away. And Greg and Mark were best friends. They were brothers. And like I said in previous videos, you don't have to be blood to be family. They were family. And Mark was great to me. He loved the Buffalo Bills just like Greg and I did. He also loved Iron Maiden, and he loved his family. And we would talk about everything while we were up there, and I was stickering for him, and he was throwing the belt. Those are my favorite times at Wegmans. I cherished them. I missed them. And as I said in the previous video, Buffalo Bills games are not the same without sitting on the couch over here with my dad watching the games. And they're also not the same because I used to cherish watching the games and then going to work the next night or the next morning and talking to Mark about the game. And usually we would bitch because the Bills would lose, and we would talk about what we need. And I remember Mark the day after the 2018 draft saying, we got our guy. Got our guy. Josh Allen's our guy. And I was skeptical because he didn't have a high completion percentage in college. And I remember telling Mark, well, guys that have a low completion percentage in college, they usually don't turn out to be great. Well, Mark was right. He usually was. And I miss him dearly. I love him. And God bless him and his family. And God bless Greg Lochner as well. Those are my greatest days of Wegmans. And the moral of all this is that all that I've become as a human being, all the ups, all the downs, all the trials and tribulations, Wegmans really shaped me to become the person that I am today. And I had a dream that when I started there, I would retire when I was 56, for 30 years into the company. Obviously, that didn't work out. But the memories that I have, I'll cherish forever. Wegmans is something I'll always love. I still shop there today, to this day. So I love you, Wegmans. Thank you for everything. Because I love Wegmans. I love you all. I love people. I love animals, even when they jump on the table. Because life is good. God is good. God bless you all. And thank you for listening.